Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
You are modeling for them having awkward conversations about sex and getting to the other side, which means that as they're becoming sexually active themselves, there might be times when they're having the same kind of awkward conversations with their partners. You are saying to them, talking about sex and being honest about this and being informed about this is not always comfortable. In fact, it's going to feel weird, but we're going to do it anyway. That's a really great thing to model for your kids also.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Lynn, I am very excited today.
I know, we're both very excited because we have with us one of our favorite people, a fantastic guest. Cindy Pierce is here to talk to us about kids and sex.
Cindy is a social sexuality educator, an author, and basically a stand-up comedian too, even though that's not in her bio.
Okay, so Cindy, hi.
Hello, Robin and Lynn. It is so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you. And we have interesting connections to you because my husband has known you and your brother for, I think we have to say like 50 years, probably, maybe 45 years.
And they have the same name.
They have the same name. Yeah.
And I separately knew Cindy and didn't know that Cindy knew Lynn because about a dozen years ago in my chapter working in women's health, we brought Cindy as a keynote speaker for the Entertainment and Life of the Party event.
Yeah, well, she is certainly entertaining and the life of the party. And she knows so much about sex and talking to your kids about sex and how to have these conversations that make us cringe. And she doesn't want us to cringe, but we're going to cringe anyway. Cindy, here's what we want. And my boys are grown up. They're men now. I would say in terms of talking to my kids about sex, I will give myself a solid C+.
Pretty good.
Do you think that's good? I don't think that's very good.
I generally aim for a B- in life. And
all right.
because all these conversations are so awkward and you never know how a kid's going to respond, you can't really have a script. You have aims and you got to be ready to be thrown off balance, and it's glitchy at best.
Before we dive in, I just want to mention two of Cindy's excellent books worth checking out. The first is Sexploitation, Helping Kids Develop Healthy Sexuality in a Porn-Driven World. And her most recent book, Sex, College, and Social Media, A Common Sense Guide to Navigating the Hookup Culture. So Cindy, you are at the forefront. You are talking to kids and teens and young adults all the time. Just tell us a little bit about what your work entails.
Yeah. So I had no intention of doing this, but I ended up in a fraternity and a sorority at Dartmouth and realized kids, despite the internet and almost because of the internet, kids are off base. They're not getting the information they need about sexuality. That's what started my work. And then I ended up for over 20 years, I've been speaking to high school students, even middle school students, parents, educators, college students, people in their 20s. I'm talking to kids, people of all ages about these topics. And I'm discussing kind of the collision of factors between social media, pressures around hookup culture, misunderstandings about consent, and internet porn and online influences. So that's kind of where I go and kind of explore the idea of social courage on the part of young people to challenge the norms and the expectations, as well as parents and educators to model social courage.
Probably a similar thing happened to you that happened to me, is that you were like, hey, I'm going to talk about sexuality and help kids get good information about this. And I was like, hey, I'm going to talk about anxiety. And so we started our careers, and then all of a sudden things just exploded. And so people are saying like, wow, you must be so busy. You're talking about anxiety. I bet that the same thing happens to you, is that, oh my gosh, Cindy, you must be so busy. You're talking about porn and social media and how kids learn about sexuality. The universe just sort of said to the two of us, here are the biggest things that we're going to have to deal with our young people. Go ahead, talk about it. I mean, that's how I sort of felt. Like they were like, here you go.
Yeah, I feel it's definitely my calling. I definitely feel like I didn't know I was stumbling in this direction, but here I am. And during the years where I was so social liability for my children, talking about this, they're begging me not to come to their school. And now they're in their 20s and they're like, yikes. But now they get it.
I'm going to tell my sons, because I did speak at my son's middle school and it became rather infamous, talking about anxiety and talking about bullying. I'm going to just remind them that they could have been Cindy Pierce's sons.
Yes, I tell audiences, when at the end of this, you're going to be so glad I'm not your mom.
So for everyone who's listening, I just imagine some of our listeners, like their eyes got as wide as saucers. And the concept of having to talk about these things with your kids. But that's on purpose. We're going to start small. We're going to go in the beginning, because a lot of parents will say, I don't even know where to start with this. And they have come to the perfect place. So let's talk about, how do parents set the groundwork for a culture of healthy conversation around these topics? And I assume that you will probably say start them young.
Very young. Here's the thing. I think all parents hope that one day, when their child is an adult out of their house, they would like them to have a healthy relationship with their body and with sexuality. But they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to know about it. They're hoping it can stave it off for as long as possible.
And they want it to just happen.
And have it all work out. But the thing is, if we really want that to be a healthy relationship, and often people don't have a healthy relationship with their body and with sexuality, and they want that for their children. If you honestly want that, that means you need to start investing when they're very young, meaning when they're 3 and 4, using appropriate terms. Even if you're not at ease, just tenderize them with the words and the concepts, keeping your pulse down. Even if they're doing weird things or saying things, you're like, panicked. Keep your pulse down. Overreacting will interfere with the trusted relationship. And then, this is not that new, but people don't want to believe this, because in the 80s, when they were in 5th grade, they learned about sex and they think that would work. But what the difference is, we now have the internet. And even if you're super strict with the internet, your kid will have friends who are exposed. So to combat this, starting the conversations about sexuality start between the ages of 5 and 7. And our pediatrician told us this 20 years ago. At first, I thought he was picking on me because I have a show about sex. But no, in fact, this was because of the internet, because they're exposed to kids. So we did this with all of our kids. It was glitchy, all around glitchy. Each one was different, felt very comfortable, but they throw you different questions. So it doesn't always go smoothly, but it has paid off. And I expected them to thank us when they were 40. They actually, in their teens, are like, thanks for the truth about sexuality. Because we know informed kids, this research has been out there, kids who get accurate, comprehensive sexuality, and parents are the primary sexuality educators, those kids actually make healthier choices, delay, and have better experiences and understand consent. So there's the big why.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we will dive in step by step how to do that.
Okay.
This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. Lynn, I know you're not a fan of the holiday season.
I know. I try.
It is a very busy time, and we're always rushing around trying to get additional tasks done. So I get that. But you know what we both love?
Liquid IV.
We do. Whether you forget to take a sip of water during the office holiday party, or you start feeling parched after a long day of travel or hosting,
Or shopping.
keep Liquid IV on hand to stay hydrated through the holidays.
I take it to work out, but I'm just drinking it all day long. I have said this before, everybody. I don't really like to drink water. I love drinking Liquid IV. I am getting so much more hydration because it's sitting in my refrigerator waiting for me sugar-free.
I like the sugar-free lemon lime liquid IV. I also love
Yes.
the peach sugar-free.
It does taste fabulous. 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone.
It's powered by LIV Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. And it's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free.
Stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code FLUSTER at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code FLUSTER at liquidiv.com. This message is sponsored by Greenlight.
As your kids get older, some things about parenting definitely get easier. My boys know how to cook now, but when they were teenagers and young adults, it was so important for us to have conversations about money. Kids don't really know how to manage money until they're actually in charge of it. And this is why practice and using Greenlight can really help.
Greenlight's a debit card and a money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on the kids' spending and saving, and while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills. The Greenlight app shows kids how to save, invest, and spend wisely thanks to games that teach money skills in a fun and accessible way.
Greenlight app also includes the chores feature, where you can set up one-time or recurring chores customized to your family's needs.
And you can reward kids with an allowance for a job well done. I just like how much more it holds me accountable to paying my kids for their chores, and they know if they're going to get paid, they're so much more willing to do it. So it's a win-win for our household.
It's really about teaching cause and effect, making a connection between doing something and getting the reward, and then thinking about how you want to spend the reward responsibly. It's just great to give these kids opportunities so that they know what their money is going to and they know how it all works.
Millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight. It's the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and families to navigate life together. So sign up for Greenlight today at greenlight.com/fluster.
That's greenlight.com/fluster to try Greenlight today. Greenlight.com/fluster.
Time to move? Skip the hassles of selling during the holiday season and sell your home directly to Opendoor. Request an all-cash offer in minutes, close, and get paid in days. You can even pick your close date so you can move after New Year's. Start your move at opendoor.com or download the Opendoor app. Opendoor is represented by Opendoor Brokerage Inc., license 02061130 in California, and Opendoor Brokerage LLC in its other markets. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, we're back.
First of all, there's all these excuses people come up with, and I just want to get those out there. I want to protect their innocence. That is really about you protecting your own innocence. So you need to get in there and understand that actually your child can have a lovely childhood and enjoy a playful childhood and still be informed. And saying they have no interest, they haven't asked questions, they're late to develop. I learned in 5th grade. If I tell them about this, they're going to want to do it. That's actually a myth that needs to be completely forgotten. It is not true. Actually, that doesn't make them want to do that. I love when people approach they're late to the game and they get to their 4th grader, and their 4th grader, as soon as they approach sex, they'll say, "I already know everything." And the parent retreats. They're like, "Oh, perfect. Great. Like, are you kidding me? No."
But I can totally see that happening. You start to have this awkward conversation, and then your 4th grader is like, "I got this." And you're like, "Oh, thank goodness. I'm so glad you're informed. Now we don't have to have this conversation." I can totally see that happening. Yeah.
So when you talk about this, though, you would recommend that people start having a conversation age 5 to age 7. How much information is the right information, according to the research?
Yeah, give us the opening line.
I would say, hey, there's some things I want to talk to you about because, you're starting to hear things at school. You're starting to be online and you might get some different ideas about things. So I want to talk to you. And I just started with, it's always, most of the sex that happens is not about making babies. So some people like to focus on that. But really, sex is mostly about pleasure, which is confusing. But you can say, There's two adults have sexually intimate experiences. It's something adults do. Sometimes it involves making a baby. A lot of times it's something adults do to connect. And the thing is, if they're between the ages of 5 and 7, they are much less likely to vomit. They're less likely to give you the stiff arm, to freak out. They might cover their ears, but you just keep tenderizing them. And what I mean is you keep bringing these words. So they get used to their parents saying the words vagina, vulva, testicles, penis, and talking about sexuality. I mean, the thing is, we really can't give a script because each kid will shock you with their response, their question. So if you have your planned script, Deborah Rothman has great stage by stage things to consider. And going through all of that, I think is less important than because you just don't know. Each of my kids, the first one was very pensive and interested and then asked to go play in the sandbox. The second one laughed in my face. The third one asked me questions that completely freaked me out. And I'm pretty comfortable with almost anything. You just don't know. But the key is it's not one conversation, except that it will go badly in some ways and pretty well in others. They can't unhear. Think of it as about 20% retention of what you say each time, which is why you layer it and you revisit it every couple months. Check in, see what they understand. You can talk about animals. We had chickens. That was with a rooster. So we got a lot of demonstrations going on in the backyard. Not about pleasure, really. That wasn't. Sometimes it's easier to get some distance. I think there are great books. Corey Silverberg's books are incredible. They're inclusive. Roby Harris's books have been around forever. Those are books, reading books with your kids. Shafia Zaloom has great information for parents. Amaze is a great way. So some parents aren't comfortable having the direct conversation. And you can start with a video from Amaze. They're short videos and you can find them for different age kids. And you watch a video or you read a book and that leads to a conversation. And as your kids go along, like one of my great parent educators, Vicki Hofel, talks about privileges and responsibilities. And your kid, no matter how young, even at 5, they might want to watch a show. They might want to go someplace. They might want you to take them to the playground. They might want you to do this, that, go to a friend's house. You can say yes. The answer is yes, as soon as we read this book. It feels like you're bossing your kid into it, but it's worth it. And you just keep at it. And even if they're like, nyah, 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 and as they get older, let's say you haven't talked to your kids, and a lot of people hear my presentation, and then they're like, oh my gosh, my kid's 15 and a half. Where do I start? I'm like, start now. Even if they're 19, heading off into the world, start now. And you say, look, now it's going to be super awkward. You have to acknowledge that. You have to admit what you don't know. And I think that modeling that for kids, that you're willing to have this awkward conversation, you are willing to dive in despite your discomfort, and that you can get to the other side of awkward. What a message for kids. Parents are always trying to look like they know everything and they've got all the answers. We were stumbling, fumbling. We're comfort in the stumble. That is my mission. When they see us get through it, how does that convert to them? That puts them at ease the next time they don't know. And that's a really important thing to model.
Well, and also you are modeling for them having awkward conversations about sex and getting to the other side, which means that as they're becoming sexually active themselves, there might be times when they're having the same kind of awkward conversations with their partners. You are saying to them, talking about sex and being honest about this and being informed about this is not always comfortable. In fact, it's going to feel weird, but we're going to do it anyway. That's a really great thing to model for your kids also.
Well, it's a life skill that Lynn and I talk about all the time. How do you manage your discomfort when you need to have that conversation? You want to show that. And I think it's important to what you're saying, Cindy, acknowledge that it's uncomfortable. Tell them this is hard for me, but we're going to just get through it together anyway, as opposed to trying to pretend it's easy. You don't gain anything there.
Oh, you are preaching. This is great. That is it. You don't gain anything by pretending it's easy. I mean, and it's such a gift to them. And one thing, I think the car is always great. And when it's dark and you're both facing front is awesome. I've had my kid pressed against the passenger door. Why did I come to the bus station with you? I knew this would be problematic. And then another mother, the one with the 15-and-a-half-year-old, she said, I blew it. She said to her kid, look, once a week, we're going to have a 5-minute discussion. It's going to be super awkward. It's about sex. I have failed you, and now I'm going to step in. And we're going to sit on the couch facing forward. You set your timer. When the timer goes off, I cannot say, oh, one more thing. Oh, do you have... I just zip it, and that's that. And for the first 3 weeks, that kid bolted from the couch. And on the 4th week, he was now a little more used to it. And he said, okay, wait. You said something the other day, last time, and that is confusing. And then he's used to it. Another thing you can say is, look, I got some new information. Let's say you've been going along. I got some new information. When my kids heard me say new information, they're like, here we go. We're always learning. And that's the thing. In order to have the conviction to have these conversations, you need to keep educating yourself. I have a long list of resources, videos and books and articles and guidelines that help you. And if once a week, spend 15 minutes just getting yourself more dialed in, watch some Amaze videos on your own. And you will get more comfortable with, every family has different values. I was very explicit that our kids had friends with 2 moms, friends with a mom who had a sperm donor, 2 dads, all different kinds of couples. And I think I thought it was important to talk about all sexuality for all genders and all orientations. Now, that's my choice. Some people find that overwhelming, but it has paid off because they're trying to make sense. And actually, when they're 5, 6, and 7 years old, they are so much more tolerant of our stumbles and fumbles and figurings. And as they get older, it gets harder. And they're also more accepting. They see, okay, there's 2 dads, there's 2 moms. It's just putting things into place.
Yeah. I think that one of the things you said is so important for parents to hear is that parents feel awkward about this and they're looking for the exit ramp. So as soon as their kids push back or as soon as their kids say I don't want to talk about this, the parents, they know they're supposed to talk about it, but they will be very relieved to be relieved of this duty. And that's where you have to keep pushing through. And the other thing too is that the more you do it, it's practice. I love that idea of 5 minutes and when we're done, we're done. Because I think when parents get nervous, we talk about this all the time. I always say talk 85% less because parents will think they've got one shot. They've got to say everything. They've got to get it all in. They're going to overwhelm their kids. We know when we're delivering big things to kids, they listen for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then they go inside and they start having their own conversations. So a big 15-minute talk for a 5-year-old, not really what you're going to, and probably for a 15-year-old too.
Right. For any of them. Yes. 5-minute chunks is worthwhile. And the checking in. And if we don't speak up, we need to be another voice in their head. And a lot of people say, yeah, but I'm old. Some people say, I'm not even having sex. And it's that's okay. That should be reason to invest in this conversation. Or if I'm not with a partner, still, that should be. You want to help them. But if we don't speak up, the internet wins and the peers win. And kids, any kid who can read, kids are curious, normal to be curious. They're curious about naked bodies and sex. They will look things up online. And when you do these searches, the porn industry is poised to look for those searches and will provide all sorts of things. So porn has become the primary sexuality educator. So in order to counter that, we have to speak up. And that is motivating enough for me that I want them to hear about healthy consensual sex, which the porn that will come up is not showing that. And as alarming as that is, and you just have to say, if I don't speak up, who's going to fill that void? And that's the internet.
Which is what I talk about all the time in terms of mental health information. The greatest source of mental health information for teenagers is TikTok. And we know that the information is really inaccurate. So I would imagine that it's the same in your category as well. The other thing too, I would bet, Cindy, that you start talking to your kids when they're 5, 6, 7 about this, and you say to them, you're allowed to come to me with questions. And so when they're 13 and 14 and 15, and when they hear about something or they learn about something, you've already laid the groundwork that you're willing to go there. And so even if the information you're giving them at 5 and 6 and 7 is pretty basic stuff and you're teaching them the terminology, et cetera, that you are creating a culture in your family, you're creating an environment in your family where it's really okay to ask awkward, difficult questions. And mom and dad are not going to freak out.
That is the key. And sometimes they will say something that will make you're just, I'm a hyper reactor myself, can't conceal. But I've learned to be like, put my hand on my pulse, bring it down. And that's really the key, is you want to be the safe person they come to. And I really didn't expect. We had one kid who's asking outrageous questions, one who's just pensive, and the other all the way through. She had one hand out, but we have to remember when they're giving you the stiff arm, there's also another hand that's saying, I'm actually taking this in. That kid retained it so much. And by 8 or 9, they were starting to say, look, our friends really don't know anything. They started to not say, I'm grateful, but they were like, wow, people don't know about this. And everyone worries, if I tell my 5-year-old, they're going to go to school and spray everyone down with this.
Right. That was my next question, actually. Yeah.
Hey, Mom, did you know that nobody at school, this is my kindergartner at the time, knows that girls have a vagina? And I said, well, who did you ask? And he goes, everybody. So it happens. It happens.
There are those kids. And the thing is, I sometimes warn the teacher, like we've had some big discussions, just so you know.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And just say, look, regardless of what you think, we feel this is necessary. Here's why. Just be ready in case. And one of my kids was like, are you kidding? My friend thinks baby's coming out of his mother's belly button. I'm not going to bring this up with him. And then the other is embarrassed. And it's usually they kind of get it because it doesn't really fly when you're out on the playground like, hey, did you know?
Learned a few things about testicles. You want me to bring you up to speed? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. The boy goes to the playground and says, I have some new information. And
Yes.
they know what to do. Just like they take your line.
I've had a fraternity brother leave my talk and hear from his girlfriend that he showed up at her door and said, I have some new information. How beautiful is that?
Can I ask you like a little more philosophical approach too? Because you touched on this. A lot of people have more than one kid. So when you have a baby that you are developing in your stomach, it's a phenomenal time to talk about physical development, body parts, etc. I didn't realize I had done this, but because I had worked in women's health and all of the conversations were so prevalent, my daughter knew everything about the mechanics of a baby, a woman's body, like all of that. And I had this very key conversation, and honestly, I don't know what age she was, but I was like, I have a secret that I haven't shared with you yet. And that is that you know everything about sex from the context of making a baby. But what's not so secret is that sex is actually about pleasure. And that's why people have it, so that we have babies. Do you feel like it's wrong, or not wrong or right or whatever, but how important do you think it is to introduce the pleasure concept at the beginning? Because I think a lot of people feel like it's easier to talk about the mechanics of it.
I am like you, Robin. We've been in this like pleasure. We're pleasure queens. So we're sharing that. We're like, come on. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that.
That's going to be another podcast, everybody.
Yes.
I'm going to step aside, and Robin and Cindy are going to do a podcast episode called Pleasure Queens, and we'll warn you about that. We'll give you a warning about that.
So I think when we talk about sexuality in a heterosexual couple, we're always speaking about the man ejaculating. That's the semen that goes out. And I'm telling you, 5th graders can recite the whole process. Like vas deferens and and the erection and the whole. They can give you all these details. Any gender kid comes home from the 5th grade sex ed, and they can talk about fallopian tubes, ovaries, the uterus, but the vulva gets no play. And the vulva is the external part of the vagina where the pleasure resides. The labia have nerve endings, the clitoris. I speak to kids about the clitoris because it has 10,000 nerves. It got an upgrade, by the way, 2 years ago. 3 doctors, they discovered the clitoris has 10,000 nerves. Nothing on the human body has that. And on an eraser head sized clitoris. So I speak about women have that. That is a source of pleasure. Female orgasms, that they're more complicated than male orgasms, that it's living under a hood. I give the whole thing. And then when they look at a book and they're looking at a vulva, they can see these parts. And the vagina is the birth canal and the vulva is the external part. Like that alone, a lot of people are skeptical about that. I think it's important that talking about pleasure, regardless of the gender, talking about the pleasure of genitals and how that works for both people. And I think we're pretty hypocritical. I still see it. I thought this would change when I saw younger parents. If a little boy forever sticks his hand in his diaper, everyone's like, oh, look at him go. He's just like his dad. Lots of jokes. When a girl toddler puts her hand in her diaper, everyone's like, that is not appropriate. You should be upstairs in your room. That's something you do in private. You can't touch yourself. And that's so hypocritical to me. And I encourage parents to be consistent. If you think they shouldn't be doing that, but I would also recommend don't freak out. Like, hey, I know that feels good, regardless of the gender of your child. I know that feels good, but that's something we do. You can do that in private in your bed or, not in public because we're at the playground or at a birthday party. Not overreacting once again, because once they see when they're touching their genitals, they'll be on it saying, I can light this parent a fire with this in public.
It's like the conversation I had with my boys about swearing. It was all about differentiating where and when and in front of whom. You can swear all you want in this house, but don't swear in front of this grandmother. You can swear in front of that grandmother. Now, that would be a little different if we were talking about putting your hands down your pants, but it's the same thing of swearing in and of itself is not good or bad. I don't think. It just matters how you're using it. And I think we want to talk about bodies in the same way. As you say that, that's the conversation I had with my kids about the language they were using. I think it's a great way to go with kids. And it's not shaming.
Yes.
And also it doesn't make it, you're right. If little kid swears and everybody goes, oh, do not say that word. That is just an invitation for them to say that word. If a little kid puts his hands in his diaper, a little girl puts her hands in her diaper and we go, oh, do not do that. Well, that's interesting. That was an interesting reaction.
Yeah. And you get undivided attention from the adult. When you get that reaction, you're like, oh, this works. In the bathtub, I remember being like, everyone, hands on your own genitals, please. And it can get out of hand.
It's just good for everybody, isn't it? That's a good life lesson. In the bathroom, hands on your own genitals, please. Yeah.
Yes.
This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori. VUORI.com/Spotify.
How about some fresh out of the oven gingerbread, bright snowdrop, fresh Iowa pine, and cool peppermint to put you in the holiday cleaning spirit? Made with goodness, not a lot of nonsense. Mrs. Meyer's. See what good can grow. Visit mrsmeyers.com today.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. Meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Okay, so now back to the show. And even if your child asked you a question, I think it's perfectly appropriate for a parent to say, gosh, I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out. I don't know how to answer that question. Give me a day or two to figure this out.
I think that is key.
If they're middle schoolers or older too, you could say, I don't know, but you know what? I think my job is to give you the most accurate, good information so you can count on me for that. And I need some time to get it.
Oh, that's awesome, Robin.
Just keep reinforcing that message, right? I'm going to give you the best information that's always going to be more accurate than what your friends or other sources will give you. So I don't always have that ready. You're branding yourself as the best source.
And keep reminding them. But one thing, it's unlikely. Most parents say their kid, when they say, what do you know? And the kids, I don't want to talk about it. Nah, nah, nah. And that's where you have to say, hey, look, here are some privileges you have in your life. And here are your responsibilities. And the responsibilities that go along with those privileges is having these hard conversations. So if this is not a good time, fine, but we're going to find a time. And if you want to go today to go do that special thing, then here's the ticket. This is the part of the responsibility of that privilege of me driving you there, is that we're going to have the conversation.
And you know what this sort of reminds me of too, Cindy, as you say this, because we're having so many conversations right now about when kids should get smartphones. And it seems to me that that would be, if your 11-year-old comes to you and your 12-year-old comes to you and says, I want a phone, or your 14-year-old or your 13-year-old says, I want Instagram or I want social media, you can say, okay, in order for you to have this device that is going to give you access to all this information, before we do that, we're going to have these conversations. I think that's a really great way to leverage that privilege of having a smartphone. You don't give your kid a Maserati without having them do driver's ed. And you can say to kids, you're not going to get a smartphone until we have conversations about accurate information.
Right. And that's the thing. Parents say, oh, they hand a phone over. It's out of sight, out of mind what they're accessing. Curious kids are looking for things. They're getting such a miseducation around sexuality through their phone because porn is the primary place. Absolutely. If your kid has a phone, there's nothing you should not be talking about. And really, once a kid is 12, there's nothing you should not be talking about, like really digging into all of it.
I think that's one other question I still have is, I understand we have the responsibility of covering, and you just say everything in air quotes. What are parents supposed to cover? Like, how big do we go?
Okay, so that, I mean, you're talking about the porn conversation, really? Kids are being exposed younger and younger. A common age of first exposure is, for boys in the US, is 9 years old. And people say, I read on the internet it's 12 or 13. We can't interview young people under 18, but when we get people to 18 and you interview, they say, I saw it in first grade, I saw it in third grade. So it's getting younger and younger. They have access to devices on their own, or their friends have access without parents around. When I say everything, I'm talking about by 12, you're talking about pleasure, you're talking about the miseducation of porn, you're talking about intercourse, you're talking about I always started this much earlier, but what pediatricians say is that at 12 years old, they're exposed to everything. So don't feel like there's any place to hold back about what's on the internet, what kinds of relationships people are having, sexuality relationships. I mean, there's just this idea of they're not ready. Once a kid's 12, these days, they're ready because they're trying to make sense of it. Whether you want to believe they've seen or heard anything, everyone said, I've told them our values. They know our values. They'd never look at that. Or they're so busy with their sport or their instrument, they don't have time to look at these things. And that is such a naive way to go about it. They're exposed.
My 14-year-old boy is really practicing his trombone a lot.
Yes.
And so he is not masturbating because he is very interested in his trombone. I'll just have you know. Yeah. I don't know how he's fitting it in.
Yeah. Our pediatrician said at 12, go for it.
So I'm still going to drill that down a little. Okay. So body parts intro and how things work, the act of sex, the sources of pleasure, still we're in the basic category. Then there's the personal development of a child, teenager into a young adult. So then there's the topic of masturbation. And then by 12, when you say like everything's on the table, how does an adult have a healthy sex life?
Okay, so I would always say to a kid, our hope as parents or caregivers is that you take your time and you choose your partners carefully. That is the goal. We know because we have plenty of personal experience with all of our friends and people we know. We're teaching about sex years before you're going to be sexually intimate with a partner. And the safest sex is what you can have with yourself. And masturbation is healthy and normal for all genders. And there's a lot of concern about that. But that we need to say, it is normal to touch yourself and actually know your body. And you know what? I just learned that by encouraging, girls are not encouraged to masturbate. There's still a lot of shame around that. It's not normalized. But girls who touch themselves, actually, when they get in touch with that, they're more likely to be healthier, to do a breast exam, to know if there's something abnormal in their vulva or their vagina and in their breasts. And that actually encouraging that and normalizing that is an investment in their future health and their awareness of their bodies. There's a lot of inequity, or what's the word? Hypocrisy around. There's a lot of hypocrisy around. Oh, and I hear this from particularly moms, but from parents and caregivers. I want my daughter to have clear boundaries, and I want her to be powerful and be able to say no and to know what she wants. But if you really want that, then you should be talking to her about her clitoris and the power of her pleasure zones. And if you don't, you're putting her in a position to give pleasure to a partner, to not consider her own needs. And people say, oh, she'll figure it out. No, I'm sorry. I've been in this world of female pleasure, and I am stunned by how few people just figure it out. Even if they buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of vibrators, they still don't figure it out. So we need to give pleasure education is key if we really want our daughters to have pleasurable, consensual, awesome relationships with a partner of any gender.
And when you talk about pleasure education, and first of all, Lynn, we just had a podcast episode we recorded where the phrase hundreds of dollars of vibrators was uttered.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think was going to happen. As we talk about pleasure education, obviously we're trying to always we're removing shame and describing the possibility. Again, like people are like, what does that mean? What does pleasure education mean?
Pleasure education, talking about the clitoris. The clitoris, 10,000 nerves. The thing is a winner, but it's not that accessible. It's living under the clitoral hood. The average time it takes a woman to have an orgasm is 20 minutes. It's direct because there's 10,000 nerves, direct high pressure or friction that's really too aggressive really hurts. A light, well-lubricated touch is what makes that clitoris sing. There's a variety of studies, but I find most compelling. People say, I've heard between 67 and 80% of women need clitoral stimulus as well as penetration from their own helping hand, from their partner's hand, from a vibrator while being penetrated. It's that no matter the size, no matter the pace, it's not going to stimulate the clitoris. Now, Lori Mintz, who is a professor in Florida, she has for years with her grad students have people doing surveys, learning about pleasure. Her research says 92 to 94% of women need extra stimulus on the clitoris. So no one's teaching girls this, yet they want them to have satisfying relationships and be clear with their partner. Once again, when we talk to our kids and show them that we can have these awkward conversations, that helps a girl learn that she needs to be the GPS for her clitoris. She needs to, because it's moving camp every day, it's different things, give it pleasure. It's not a guarantee. That thing's a tricky, complicated terrain down there.
And I've had this conversation with my husband where you're watching a movie and it's not even porn. You're just watching a movie. And that scene where the guy comes in and he pushes the girl up against the wall. And in 2 minutes, they're like, and she's like, I'm like, and I've said to him, that's the fabrication of the male experience, right? That's how it happens. I mean, I think those are the conversations you can have with your daughters. I think you're so right, Cindy. I just don't think girls get this information. I just don't think they do.
They don't. We need to step into it. And if we don't, get your community to do an OWL program. The kids who go through the Our Whole Lives program in their communities become peer leaders, unofficial peer leaders, and sources of information in their community. It's amazing. And some parents, they're so nervous about having this conversation, they start grinding on the school about having the conversation. But the school is limited. Public schools are limited what they can say. And so they spend all the years trying to get the school to have better sex ed instead of having the conversations. Then their kid is through it and already online and getting miseducated. I say put your energy on your own kids and give them the truth. There's so many great resources you can share with them. And the payoff, Our kids are in their 20s. I cannot tell you how grateful, all three very different humans, how it's paid off. The payoff, I'm telling you from the trenches, it was not easy, even though I'm super comfortable. My husband's comfortable, but the payoff has been incredible and so worthwhile. And I can't recommend it enough. It's an early investment.
And I think everybody, as we finish this up, and we're going to have another episode with Cindy where we're going to talk about porn. So hang on. But as we finish this up, I think this is such an important message for everybody listening to hear. Cindy Pierce, who is a sexuality educator who talks about this all the time, who's absolutely willing to go there, said it was really uncomfortable for her to talk to her kids. We have to embrace that. She is not saying, look, it's really easy for me. It'll be hard for you, but it was easy for me. It feels uncomfortable, and you cannot take the first exit ramp off of this, because I think a lot of parents are looking for that. You've got to step into it over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.